Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Graventon. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, things seem to be going from bad to worse with the 45th president of these United States of America, Donald J. Trump, and that one lingering issue that continues to be a thorn in his side. That notion of the Russian collusion or alleged Russian collusion between his campaign during the 2016 presidential election cycle and the Russian Federation, as well as Russian strongman, autocrat, dictator, and all around thug, Vladimir Putin. Now, it's important to stress at this juncture that there hasn't really been any direct evidence of collusion by Trump himself, per se, that has gone forth in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. But there is something interesting that comes out of all of this. It has been brought to the surface that on June 9th, 2016, there was a meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and a Russian attorney in which there was an email exchange where it was stated that there would be information or evidence offered by this attorney to Donald Trump Jr. regarding negative aspects to Hillary Clinton. And apparently in this email chain, Donnie Jr. came forth and said, "I love it." And now the subterfuge that's going forth is that Donnie Jr. is saying that the attorney didn't share any of this information, but it's kind of a really strange web. And it's interesting to note that over on The Blaze, they had put out a piece by Leon Wolf today, and it says, in an effort to be totally transparent, Donald Trump Jr. has released his entire email chain between himself and Rob Goldstone, concerning a 2016 meeting with a Russian attorney that has caused headaches and controversy for the Trump administration. Trump Jr. released the emails on his personal Twitter account along with a paragraph-long statement defending his actions. Now, what's interesting about this is the Russian lawyer is Natalia Valenskaya, and everybody involved is denying that there was any connection with the Kremlin or possessing any information that was damaging about the Clintons at all. But here's the part that gets interesting. It came from a Russian pop star named Eamon Agalarov, who is known to the Trumps through their work on the Miss Universe pageant. And Goldstone states in an email that this Eamon just called and asked me to contact you with something very interesting. The Crown Prosecutor of Russia met with his father, Aras, this morning, and in their meeting offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. And then it says it's obviously a very high level and sensitive information, but it is part of Russia and its government support for Mr. Trump, helped along by Aris and Amin. In response, Trump Jr. stated, "Thanks, Rob, I appreciate that. I am on the road at the moment, but perhaps I just speak to Amin first. Seems we have some time, and if it's what you say, I love it, especially later in the summer." That is pretty damning stuff, wouldn't you say, Jeremy? I would say that's pretty damning.
Well, Agalarov, why does that name sound familiar? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we've mentioned his name before.
Mm-hmm.
Over a year ago. Roughly. Well, almost a year ago. Close to a year ago. I'm actually right now going back through my archives. And I'm looking for it. I had an article that actually specifically named, in fact, actually showed photos of Imam Agalarov. And I think it was Ivanka wannabe Miss Queen Trump. Yeah. And give me for a moment, but I'm just perusing. I can't remember which one it was. I do have articles posted, or not posted, but rather, archived.
Right.
It's just going back through them. I can't remember which one because there's just so many of them.
Right.
But it's again, it comes to the point to where, is there proven collusion? No, there's not. Is there suspected collusion? Well, I would say now more so than ever, because there's more and more signs pointing to it. See, all these individuals that Trump has been involved in prior to even thinking about running for office, with individuals from the Bayrock Group, and then Anthony Fat Tony Salerno, head of the Genovese crime family, ran a concrete company, go figure, how cliche, in Manhattan. It's just, you have all of these different things, all of these previous associations that are pretty much the skeletons that are coming out of the closet.
Mm-hmm.
And the bones are rattling, folks. They really are.
They are. And, one of the things that we can also take away from this is that, yeah, there are no clean hands when it comes to this. There's no doubt in my mind that the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media is trying to do everything in their power to paint this off as part of their propagandist narrative and agenda, and that they would want this to damage Trump as much as possible. And again, we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, must further reiterate that we don't want the president to fail, because that would be rooting for the failure of the United States. But there is something that's concerning about this. All of this is a bit disconcerting when you stop and think about it, because of the claims that Trump has made that he had no idea of any type of contact between any Russian attorney and his son. Well, that turned out not to be true. And that there was no discussion at all, or even pretense or pretext as to state that there would have been discussion of damaging information or evidence against Hillary Rodham Clinton. And that's not to say that we're, defending Hillary Clinton, because we aren't. It's just that when you look at the way that all of this is happening, there's a web of deceit that is going around on all sides. Nobody's coming to this with clean hands. Nobody is trying to be forthright and honest and basically telling the truth, because they're trying to go forth and create their own web of deceit. And there's a clip from Glenn Beck that I want to play, at least part of, that he was saying, be cautious about what is in those emails and about what those emails entail, because it could have drastic ramifications for this entire incident. And not just this incident, but this entire presidency. And so let me go ahead and cue that up, and then we will discuss it in greater depth and detail. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So let me go ahead.
New information from yesterday. We spent very little time on this yesterday, because what we had was a he said, she said. We had a Russian operative, or at least a foreign national from Russia, that we now know is deeply connected to the Kremlin and Putin. We knew that this foreign national met with Donald Trump Jr., Kushner, and also Manafort. We know that Manafort has dealings with Russia, and that's not good, and he's already left the service. We also knew yesterday that the story kept changing with the Trump side about this meeting, and in fact, it was a felony had they not reported this, but for some apparent reason, a few weeks ago, they all put this and changed their application for top secret security clearance. They suddenly remembered this and put it onto their top security clearance. Had this come out without them changing it a few weeks ago, well, until we learned about Hillary Clinton, I would have assumed jail time. But I'm not convinced that people, except people like you, actually go to jail in this country anymore.
That's the problem. That's the problem right there. It's that there is no longer this belief that the United States is a nation of laws and not of men. We are going to selective enforcement of the law. We are essentially creating a separate niche for those that are in the upper echelons of it. And again, all of this plays out in a way that is exceedingly negative for who we are, both as a nation and people. It's something that doesn't bolster confidence within the American system of polity. And it just goes to show that people are right when they're sitting there saying that it is so corrupt these days that there is no distinction between the two parties. And that's something that our first Air Marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward, had mentioned during some of the various conversations that he was having in one of the avenues of social media. Again, it's this whole notion that nobody is clean. The media is certainly not clean. The Democrats are not clean. But Trump and his camp aren't clean either. Because if you stop and think about it, they suddenly magically remembered that this happened and then changed those things. Kind of convenient. Sounds like a coincidence. But Jeremy, you and I both know that in the line of work that we do, or our vocation, there really is no such thing as a coincidence. So what is happening here is seedy, to say the best. And it is pretty troubling to me to see that this is how the Trump organization is working. It's how the media is working. It makes me wonder who in the hell is out there looking out for the best interests of the American people. Because the way I see it right now, it ain't any one of these people.
You know, I didn't find the article that I was looking for, but I found one that's, well, just as damaging. See, Randy's correct. Coincidence it's a myth. It's an anomaly. Okay. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that whatever happens at that point, any given point in time, is exactly what's supposed to happen. Time is infinite. So since nobody on this earth is capable of being in two different places at once, wherever you are at that given point in time, that's where you're supposed to be. And it's kind of funny because this article that I have from money.cnn.com, and I know, look at CNN, it's fake news. Oh, it's the charade news network. Dated July 31st, 2016. Long before the whole fake news thing even happened. And in this article, it actually, well, the title of the article is Donald Trump's Ties to Russia Explained. It starts off with, Trump having to disavow any links, because suspicions were raised about Russia behind the hack of the DNC emails. Goes on, yada, yada. Trump's trademarks in Russia, Miss Universe, we've covered. A home sale in 2008, a Russian billionaire paid Trump $95 million for a Florida mansion. Guess what? Trump made $54 million on the deal. $54 million. Trump Tower in Moscow? No, but he tried several times to have it built. Russian statue in Manhattan? No. Trump vodka's mentioned in here. A deal with a shady Russian immigrant. Now, this is the one that I wanted, and I mentioned the Bayrock Group.
Mm-hmm.
You have an ex-con, a Russian ex-con named Felix Sater. He was an executive of Bayrock Group, which, by the way, folks, the Bayrock Group licensed Trump's name in order to build Trump Soho in New York and the Trump Tower in Fort Lauderdale. Guess what happened to Sater in 1998? He pled guilty to racketeering. In 2013 deposition for a lawsuit, which Trump claims never, he never settles or anything, Trump basically said if they were sitting in the same room together, he wouldn't even know what he looked like. How is that possible? You are licensing your name to an individual who was found guilty, pled guilty to racketeering, but you don't even know what the individual looks like. Perhaps maybe it wasn't Trump, maybe it was John Barron.
Or John Miller.
Or John Miller. Or John Green. Maybe he decided to adopt his grandpappy's alter ego.
His father's alter ego.
Yeah. So, looking at these things, putting all this together, is there collusion that the Russians, thwarted the election and had any interference with the election? We don't have all the facts yet, but what we do have historical facts with Trump's interconnections with people from Russia, Russian mob bosses, various other notorious mafia types, Fat Tony.
Mm-hmm.
All of these different things. And see, for an individual to have all those massive connections, all of a sudden decide one day, nope, I don't know any of them. They've never met them. I don't know anything. They're lying. They're all fake because they want to chip in and try and claim for fake news. And shut up. Your history haunts you. Everything and anything that you do, as they say, can and will be used against you.
Of course.
And it goes deeper to tracing this. All of these past connections remove plausible deniability. Therefore, there is an absolute connection, whether it's tied directly to Russia, being in cahoots with stacking the election or interfering with the election or whatever. I think that may be a little bit of a stretch, but there is collusion. Of what, we don't know, but there is collusion at a deeper level that goes further back. And it's like our first Air Marshal Nelson Ward said on a Facebook post, this goes even further back. And he even brought up the fact that, or the point that when this is all said and done, the collusion may actually point towards Trump and other individuals colluding against Ted Cruz, which I think is all entirely possible.
Of course it is. Because if you stop and think about it, Paul Manafort with Manafort in Black, remember that his partner in Manafort in Black was the campaign director of who? John the Mailman Kasich out of Ohio. So, yes, it is completely plausible that that would be the case. But here's what I'm troubled with. This is a pattern that I've seen come to the surface time and time again with respect to the administration of the 45th president. That there is always a shifting narrative with the story. If there is something that is concerning, they attempt to obfuscate the truth, to change the story, and then everybody just says it's fake news. Everything's fake news.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing about this is that the New York Times, which was one of the outlets from the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media who originally broke this story, actually stayed clear to the facts. And then by Donnie Jr. releasing that email chain, it corroborated the reporting that was done by the New York Times. Now, something else interesting with respect to this came up to the surface. Jeremy, I don't think this will surprise you. I'm sure everyone recalls how there was a time not all that long ago when everybody was singing the praises of Julian Assange of WikiLeaks with respect to whatever stories were going on at that time. Well, Julian Assange said that he wanted Donnie Jr. to give those email chains to him so that he could release it. But then Donnie Jr. did it a day later on his own. So here's something that's interesting with all of that, too. If the DNC had been hacked, which we know it had, and by the way, that speech in where Trump basically implored Russia to do that was on June 9th of 2016, the same day that this meeting occurred between Donnie Jr. and Natasha Badanov there, that Russian attorney. Isn't that interesting? It happened on the same day. Again, coincidences are fictitious. There's something deeper here. There's something very troubling, very disconcerting about all of this. And we know that with the connection between Manafrod and Yushchenko there in the Ukraine, who was the Russian puppet, and the connection between Manafrod and Black, of course, being the head guy of the failing Kasich campaign. Remember, Kasich didn't drop out until right after Texas Senator Ted Cruz did. What do you bet that all of this will somehow be tied back to that? I think that the likelihood of that, the probability of that, just increased tenfold.
Well, I found what I'm looking for. It was actually a Forbes article on Forbes.com. If you go on Forbes.com/profile, and then you type in this guy's name, Aras Agalarov, A-R-A-S, Agalarov, real-time net worth, according to Forbes, $1.92 billion. That's as of today. Okay. Here's the profile. Billionaire developer Aras Agalarov and his pop star son, Emin, have close ties to U.S. President Donald Trump. In 2013, the Agalarovs brought Trump's Miss Universe pageant to Moscow, which we've mentioned. And they say later plan to construct a Trump Tower in Russia. Again, we've mentioned. Those ambitions fell apart when the Donald ran for office. Aras began his career in the technology industry, but saw greater business potential in trade fairs. In 1989, he established development firm Crocus, which became one of the country's largest trade fair operators, being in Russia. His holdings have since expanded into an array of luxury buildings and shopping malls, including the expansive Crocus City Mall in Moscow. Emin, who once featured Trump in a music video, was previously married to the daughter of Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev. He retains close ties to the Trump family and brand. Now, again, this is a billionaire in Russia. Folks, let's use some common sense here. Given that Russia is a communist country, and
it's not really communist, but socialist.
Socialist, Putin's trying to remake it communist again.
I think he's trying to take it back to the czars.
Well, yeah. And But the question is, Randy, if you or I lived in a country like that, well, we would have to do as we were told. But yet, it seems that only the people that have the massive amount of wealth have the power in countries like that. They pull the strings to make people dance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Aguilarov is. He's a puppet master. A very rinky-dink one in standards of other countries and other puppet masters like, say, George Soros or even Warren Buffett.
Mm-hmm.
Or Valerie Jarrett. You know? But a puppet master nonetheless. So why is it that Trump's involved with him? Has Trump mentioned? You see, and Trump has never came out and said, "Oh, if we were sitting in the room, I wouldn't even be able to recognize him. I don't know who that is. This is a huge mistake. I don't know who that is. Shut up." Okay.
It comes down to something that Glenn Beck had mentioned in that clip that I played just a while back there. It's this whole notion of when Glenn sat there and said, before all of the Hillary Clinton stuff, I would have thought that this would have led to jail time. And that's the problem. That is the problem that we are facing right now, is that we are becoming more like one of those autocracies or oligarchies that we see in countries like the Russian Federation. We are slowly breaking away from our time-honored values, institutions, and traditions. And of course, I'm reminded again of the sagacious advice of that founding father of ours, Samuel Adams, when he said that if you want the United States of America to be strong, vibrant, and robust, and of course I'm paraphrasing here, then we need to be a virtuous people, a people that live by a high standard of morality, that are able to clearly differentiate between that which is right and that which is wrong. But we don't do that anymore. Because we have allowed our system of polity to essentially break down into a mere spectator sporting event, we're going to be pom-pom waving cheerleaders with respect to those who are on our side. And in fact, my friend who was attempting to stomach listening to Lush Bimbo today, meaning Rush Limbaugh, of course, he said that Rush was sitting there saying that this was just another brilliant move on the part of Trump playing the media. What? How in the hell does he make that connection? Where is that connotation? Because that's certainly not what I was getting from this. And I don't believe that that was the impression you were getting from this, Jeremy. I don't think that's what a sane, rational, thinking, logical human being would reach. But of course, Rush has a few steps to go to achieve the status of pond scum before he can even start to think of being human again. But what really concerns me about all of this is how there are so many who have just bought totally in to whatever surrounds Trump, the cult of personality, the shroud of lack of reality. They'll just be apologists for anything. They will make excuses for anything. They will genuflect themselves into pretzels to say that he's okay. And it's like how Rush came out and said, well, I never said he was conservative. Then why did you throw such support behind him? Didn't you call yourself the doctor of democracy, the Limbaugh Institute in Advanced Conservative Studies? Tell you what, Rushy, why don't you take that and go run straight to hell? You see, the betrayal that occurred in 2016 led to this sort of thing. This is what happens when we don't engage in proper vetting. And welcome, Donna. It's good to see you. Yes, it's just like all the Dems. And we have fallen far. We have fallen far from Adam's beliefs. And that's part of the problem. It's that we are looking for entertainers. We are turning to people like Donald Trump because he was a reality television star, as opposed to someone that is based on a principled philosophy. And Jeremy, I remember that it was quite some time ago that you had brought up the point of there would be hell to pay if we abandoned our principles, if we turned our backs on our values, if we sold ourselves short. And I think that we warned fairly early on that this would be the outcome. We said there would be more to this Russian thing and that it would continue to tick, tick, tick on. We are now, what, 6 months in? 6 months in to Trump's term. First year, halfway through the first year, and this Russian thing has not gone away. In fact, it is becoming an even bigger Leviathan.
Well, I just happened to stumble across another one of my archived articles that I've saved. Folks, this is from CBS News. Again, well, it's fake news. It's chicanery broadcasting services. July 29th, 2016. Article says, despite denial, Trump's connections to Russia go back years. Of course, this talks about the Agalarovs again, mentions Trump being in that stupid, if you want to call it a music video, where at the end of it, Trump is, giving his cameo as, well, whatever the hell it was, it's that show. I can't even remember the name of it. It doesn't matter. He's sitting at a table and says, "What's wrong with you, man? I'm really tired of you. You're fired."
Apprentice.
The appendage or something like that. It just, the article goes on and it talks about the Crocus Group yet again. And then here's some revealing things about Trump. In November of 2013, Trump says, you look at what's going on in Russia, in Moscow, you look at how it's just booming and how well it does. Then Trump talks about the Miss Universe pageant, so on and so forth. And then he says, this is in May of 2014, in a National Press Club luncheon. I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer. Now, think about that for a second. He spoke indirectly and directly with him, and says he couldn't have been a nicer man. But then, Wednesday, which I believe was a Wednesday in July, I don't know the exact date, but it was probably the Wednesday before this article in 2016, Trump says, I never met Putin. I don't know who Putin is. Isn't it funny that he said the same thing regarding Sater at a deposition? No, if we were in the same room together, I wouldn't even know what he looks like.
Well, Jeremy, you know what else it was like? Remember when there was dear sweet old David Dukey?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I don't know who that is. Yeah. Although we had pulled up that whole New York Times editorial piece that Trump had written back in 2000 with respect to why he was leaving the Reform Party. And, Jeremy, with you bringing up him saying that about, well, if you look at Russia and how they're booming and whatnot, you know what it reminds me of? And I've got to play this clip just because it's important to hear this again, because it is right on point with everything that you mentioned there and that we have mentioned on previous episodes with respect to this. So let me go ahead and get this queued up, and then we'll tie it in. But let me get it going right now.
American exceptionalism. Does American exceptionalism still exist? And what do we do to grow American exceptionalism?
Okay, well, I don't like the term. I'll be honest with you. And people will say, oh, he's not patriotic. Look, if I'm a Russian, or if I'm a person we do business with, Why? You know, I don't think it's a very nice term. We're exceptional. You're not. First of all, Germany's eating our lunch. So they say, why are you exceptional? We're doing a lot better than you. I never liked the term. And perhaps that's because I don't have a very big ego and I don't need terms like that. But honestly, when you're doing business, I mean, I watch Obama every once in a while say American exceptionalism. I say, oh, I don't like the term because
he doesn't like the term because we're dealing with people that are eating our lunch. But you notice, what was the first nation, first foreign nation that he mentioned? Oh, if you look at Russia, oh, that's right. But we don't have any connections with Russia. And, you know, this ties in to kind of what Donna was saying there with don't forget we want instant everything, working hard for a goal isn't respected anymore. That's right. And Trump is a reflection of that. Trump is always about instant gratification. Just walk up and grab them by the genitals. You can do it because you're a star. It's that kind of mentality. And well, that whole indirectly thing that she brought up.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why
goes on.
Does that because what he's trying to do is to create plausible deniability so that he can continue down a fake line like that.
Well, Randy, let's play a game. Let's continue to erode the foundation of plausible deniability, shall we?
We shall.
Okay. The article goes on, and it says, in a 2007 deposition, Trump spoke about plans for an international hotel in Moscow, meetings with Russian businessmen, more than likely the Agalarovs and various other, individuals. I'm guessing that Satir was part of that as well. And Trump says, and I quote, "It's ridiculous that I wouldn't be investing in Russia. Russia is one of the hottest places in the world for investment." Then on Wednesday, again, probably the Wednesday prior to this article, he denied having business dealings there. He says, "I will tell you right now, zero. I have nothing to do with Russia." So here's my question. A lot of lawyers would say, well, you can't use that line in a courtroom. Well, that's why I refer to them as lawyers and not attorneys, okay? There's a big difference, folks. Trust me, okay? See, a good attorney would actually use this following line. Were you lying then, or have you been lying the whole time?
Folks, if you only caught a part of that because he kind of dropped off a little bit, it's the line of, were you lying then? Are you lying now? Or have you been lying the entire time?
And that's the question we have to ask of Trump. You have no Russian connections. You have no business dealings there. You had no interest in ever investing there. But yet, we've pointed out your business ventures and investments and the individuals who you've colluded with in those investments and business ventures. But yet, you have nothing to do with Russia. I don't buy it. I don't think anybody with a sane brain cell in their head would buy it. We all know. No. We all know that the Trump Davidians, they're always going to turn this around and say, "Oh well, first it was collusion, and then it was there's no intent, and now it's conspiracy. These snowflakes." Listen, you cocksuckers. Okay, this is, and I'm going to continue to use the term cocksuckers. And if anybody has a problem with it, too bad. Because until somebody proves me wrong about Trump having any dealings with people tied to Russia, I'm going to continue to use it. And when they show me proof that he has never had anything to do with anything part of Russia, including individuals from Russia, then I'll stop using the term cocksuckers. But until then, I don't want to hear it.
Well, what gets me, Jeremy, is how anyone can sit there and deny these just piles of evidence. All of those connections are there. We know that they leased his name. We know that the Bayrock Group was part of it. We know that he has had these kinds of connections. We now know that his son, by his son's own releasing of those email statements, that email chain had connections with these nefarious individuals. Again, at what point does the great weight of the evidence finally become too overpowering for you to continue to suffer from acute ostrich syndrome, where you shove your head up your posterior as opposed to the sand? You know, this is something that is dangerous. We've always warned never to become rawly emotional, never to allow yourselves to be led astray by the charlatans out there that will do anything within their power to lead you down a path to deception and ultimately to ruination, because what they are trying to achieve is to strip and deprive you of your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And what do we mean when we say inalienable? It means that they cannot be removed. But if Trump and crew are willing to lie about this, then wouldn't he be willing to lie about every other campaign promise he made? Think about it. Right now, they're pushing to have the GOP Senate recess not occur until August so that they can rush through another derivative of the so-called American Health Care Act, in which it's just Obamacare 2.0. Folks, this is all of the stuff that we have been warning about over the course of the past approximate 2 years. This is something you can't ignore. It is there. The great weight of the evidence clearly indicates that this is what is going on, that this is what has been going on, and that it is not going to improve at any point in the foreseeable future. Why? Because Trump wants to have universal health care. We know that he said this before. Trump has had business dealings with Russia, because even in that American exceptionalism clip that I played part of there, we see that the first nation that he brought up that was doing better than the United States was Russia. But the biggest aspect and attribute of that that really bothers me is the fact that he completely misunderstood and completely misconstrued what American exceptionalism is about. American exceptionalism is not about our business acumen. It's not about our economy. It's about the exceptional basis of our constitutionally endowed Federalist Representative Republic, the longest standing constitution in the entire course of human events belongs to we the people of these United States. What is exceptional about the United States is the fact that we were the first nation on God's green earth to believe, champion, and found ourselves upon the notion that sovereignty belongs to the people. That is exceptional. And the fact that that went above his slick back skunk pelt head is a little bit disconcerting.
Well, here's the thing that bothers me, Randy. And people, again, would probably say that this is a bit far-fetched. But if he's willing to, talk about, oh, why wouldn't I invest in Russia? It's a hotbed. It's a great place. It's huge. I can have my own Golden Quaff there, Golden Quaff Palace, blah, blah. And then to say he has nothing to do with Russia. If he's willing to perpetuate that lie. And folks, if you don't believe that's a lie, when he said one thing and then said something completely else, you have two different sides of the coin there. Which one do you believe? Okay? You can't have both of them because they're contradictory in nature. Okay? Opposites, the same poles on a magnet will repel each other. Okay? So, with him lying about that, what's stopping him from instituting, let's say, I don't know, a tyrannical regime putting it out there and perpetuating it and broadcasting it, propagating, if you will, that this is the way we have to make America great again. Ugh. All in the guise of our freedoms and liberties being slowly and incrementally washed away and stripped from us. What would stop him from doing that? If he's willing to go so far as to lie about other things, and he's lied about a lot, you know, the whole first 100 days he's going to do this, that, and the other thing, and yet none of that has ever come to fruition. Not a single thing. Not a single thing. Well, he needs more time. He had to deal with this. No, he said he's going to do this. He didn't do it. That means he lied. I was always raised and taught to be a man of my word. When I say I'm going to do something, you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say you're going to do it in a specified amount of time, you do it in that specified amount of time. To me, when someone tells me they're going to do something and then they don't do it, that makes them a fraud. It makes them a liar, a snake oil salesman, if you will.
Well, and
so
Jeremy,
what's stopping him? And again, the question, what is stopping him from trying to create a dictatorship and a tyranny all in the guise of, we have to do this in order to make America great again? First of all, Donnie, America has never stopped being great. We've always been great. See, that's part of that American exceptionalism
that he doesn't understand.
That he doesn't care about.
No, of course he doesn't care.
He understands that he doesn't care. That's the problem.
Right. Well, it's more than that. It's more than that. Remember that one of the things that everybody kept saying throughout the election cycle of betrayal, it was that we're going to support Donald Trump because he's a straight shooter and he calls it like it is. But as you just mentioned there, he speaks out of both sides of his bigly mouth. He tries to assume both sides of every issue. And in fact, it was because of these connections that we gave him one of those monikers of being the mafioso quafioso. But here's the thing. He's no different than your run-of-the-mill politician. That's why he hired people like Paul Manafort that had Russian connections. It's why his son, with his slick-backed Guido-looking hair, was meeting with that Russian attorney, then lying about meeting with that Russian attorney, and then magically changing his security status when this was going to come up and be an issue. All of this is well calculated. Again, as we mentioned very early on in this evening's program, we do not believe in coincidence. This was orchestrated. He was doing whatever he could to win at all costs. And that is one of the major, because there isn't a solution to it if you are going to continue to move the political goalposts, is that people will excuse the inexcusable just as long as it is their guy in office. Again, we have to go back to what Sam Adams said. We have to be a virtuous people if we are going to be a strong, vibrant, robust, representative republic. What in the hell has happened to the idea that we are a free people and that we hold our government accountable? Because right now, what I am seeing here is a bunch of liars who are doing everything they can to bamboozle the American people and to perpetuate an oligarchy like that in goddamn Russia. Well, to hell with that. That is not who we are.
You know, you mentioned Trump being a politician, and he is. He always has been. For the vast majority, in fact, for his entire adult life, he was a politician. In fact, prior to him even being a legal consenting adult, he was a politician in the making.
Military school.
And here's the thing. I've asked individuals, why are you voting for Trump? Oh, he's not a politician. You know, I'm sick and tired of elected politicians. You fool. You fool. That's exactly what you're voting for. See, people do not understand this. They say that Trump, again, they were brainwashed. They ate the propaganda biscuit that was crammed into their gullet and then slammed shut by the heel of a socialist jackbooted thug. Guess what, folks? For those of you who voted for Trump because he's not a politician, do you know that in Nazi Germany, your lives would have been spared for at least 6 months? At least 6 months? You wouldn't have been, demonized or rounded up and put in concentration camps or put to death, marched into a warehouse where everybody thought, oh, we're going to get a clean shower. And then it was sarin gas, I guess it was.
Zyklon B.
Zyklon B. Okay, even worse. And then turn around and march the next group of people in there, and they died of shock because they knew the people before them were gassed, and then those people were hit with water. They were actually given a shower, and they died of shock because their brains were so melted from the propaganda. See, Goebbels would love you people. In fact, he would actually shake your hands, salute you, and you probably zig quaff right back to him in hopes that your lives are spared, in hopes that your freedoms and liberties are going to stay intact because, well, if Hillary gets elected, she's going to take all of our rights away from us. What's the difference between Hillary Clinton doing that and Donald Trump doing that? I'll tell you what the difference is. The difference is with Trump, it's much slower, it's more incremental, and it's much more dangerous to you. Hillary, we would see it head on, we would know what the dangers are, and we would know, because of history, how to combat that. If you don't believe me, go ahead and, hold a seance and ask King George what he thought on the situation, because that's how she would have behaved. Donald Trump, I think, is worse than King George.
Donald Trump is like Ivan the Terrible out of Russia. But
oh, wait, hold.
Yeah. You knew I was going to go there. You knew I was. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Donna Cephas brings up that the junior meeting reminds her of Clinton and Lynch on the tarmac.
Ooh.
You're right, Donna.
Ooh.
What this is all about. This is about pandering. This is about attempting to use political access, political gain with other nations to push yourself forward. And again, this is why we say it cannot be victory at all costs. If we sell out our time-honored values, institutions, principles, and traditions, we are literally setting ourselves up for failure, because we become the Leviathan that our founding fathers warned us about. And remember that the father of our nation, George Washington, in his farewell address of 1796, attempted to warn us about this sort of thing. To be lots of foreign dealing with the United States, because he was afraid that it would lead to this kind of collusion or even the appearance of impropriety. That's the thing. Mark my words. The Democrats are going to run in the midterm election with this Russian collusion thing. And I don't care how many times the Lion Branch Trumpidians are sitting there tap dancing to say that this isn't going to have an impact. Really? Remember what it was that brought down the Republican majority back in 2006? It was the perceived notion of the culture of corruption. You remember when Nasty Pelosi stood there in front of the rank and files for the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media and grinned that little denture grin of hers and said, "The culture of corruption is finally over. Gag me with a spoon." Ah! That is what is about to replay. And remember, one of the things that Jeremy and I kept saying throughout the course of the 2016 presidential election cycle was that this was going to be Herbert Hoover all over again. Mm-hmm. And you remember that little orphan Annie Yap Yap, Coulter Toto the Floozy.
Throw me a milk bone.
Yeah. Went out there, and Carl the Ham Yam Rove went out there and said, this is the biggest majority since 1928. Yeah? What happened? When we had a progressive, outsider, businessman, the last president until Trump to say that he's not going to take a salary, went in there and he tried the Smoot-Hartley Tariff Act. Now, Jeremy, remind me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Trump kind of champion tariffs and protectionist policies? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So all of a sudden, the Republicans go full tilt progressive after the constitutional compositionist in Calvin Coolidge. And conservatism is dormant in this country from 1929 until 1964. That means we go through FDR, the man who couldn't stand for American principles because he couldn't stand at all. Sorry if that's soon, but it's true.
Yeah. Overdue.
Truman. Ike wasn't all of that much of a conservative at all. No, it wasn't until Barry Goldwater, who wasn't even really a conservative himself, that the idea of conservatism was revived. Mm-hmm. All of the patterns, all of the pieces are there for that to be a repeat of what we have now. It's just that now the stakes are that much higher.
I'm reminded also of people saying, well, look, Trump is the next Reagan. Folks, I hate to break everybody's bubble and defecate on the altar of Reagan that people want to bow down and worship at. Reagan wasn't all that great of a president in his second term. A lot of people will make excuses. Well, he had to do this because he was pressured, and nobody see. This is the problem. This is a huge problem. Yes, it is a problem because I don't see any viable solution. At least not one that anybody is willing to take up and engage in at this current point in time. Except for a few people, but, that's neither here nor there. The problem is that people seem to think that because you hold a political office, you have to do what other people that hold political offices tell you to do. When it is contrary to the Constitution, contrary to the very document in the supreme law of the land that you take an oath for. If there's other individuals, Congress, that gaggling group of baboons, kind of fitting, tells you that, well, if you don't do this, then we're going to filibuster, we're going to stave off the session until this is done. No. Folks, I'm going to tell you right now, if Trump really wanted to get any credibility from me whatsoever, he could solve all of these issues with one single executive order. And it would be perfectly constitutional and legal for him to do this. Let's start with Obamacare. Oh, repeal and replace. Nope, wrong answer. Well, let's repeal it now and then work on replacing it later. No, wrong answer. Oh, I'm okay with that. Let's repeal it now and replace it later. No, wrong answer. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Because no matter what kind of legislation our federal government puts forth regarding any kind of health care, it is unconstitutional. Save for one thing. All Trump has to do is say, I am the executive officer of the United States. As president of the United States, it is my constitutional obligation to enforce laws that are on the books. So here's the deal. Obamacare, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, it is not a viable law. It is unconstitutional. Therefore, I am making an executive order for it to never be enforced. Guess what that does to Obamacare? You don't have to repeal it. You don't have to replace it. It becomes void. It's done. It's dead in the water. It only exists on paper in some floozy's empty head that's rattling around with unicorn feces and rocks.
Leave Ann Coulter out of this part. She didn't really bring that up.
Oh, I'm talking more along the lines of Debbie, I was once a woman, Swartz or Schultz or whatever.
Debbie Wawa show.
D. Snyder's alter ego from the 80s.
Yeah.
The thing is, if he wants to have any kind of credibility or gain any respect from me in regards to doing things that he said he was going to do, start with that. In fact, here's the thing. If you want to have perpetual respect from me, get a copy of the Constitution. Grab yourself a copy of the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers both. You're going to need both of them. And get yourself a dictionary. And if you can't read any of that stuff, hire somebody with a bigly brain to read it and explain it to you.
Well, I hear that Big Bird from Sesame Street might be willing to do that for him. May even put it to song and dance, too. But here's the thing. We look at all of this. We see that the way the narrative continually changes, and it tells us that they are not being forthright and honest with us. And you notice that in that article, it said that Trump Jr. released this in trying to be completely transparent. That's cute. That's cute. That is sheer unadulterated obfuscation. That is attempting to do damage control. Because let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to do damage not just to Donald J. Trump, not just to the Republican Party, but to the entire conservative movement. Because so many conservatives are willing to excuse the inexcusable. Now, I hope that this isn't the case, that this collusion is just that way on the surface. But the great weight of the evidence clearly indicates that that's not the way this is playing out, that that's not what this is, and that what is coming to the surface is going to be like the worst case scenario, if not arguably the worst case scenario. And again, this is why we say that the only litmus test that matters, the only litmus test that should ever matter when vetting a candidate, it doesn't matter if they use moose or if they kill a skunk and skin it alive itself and bleach that and make that their hairpiece. No. The litmus test that matters is the Constitution. Trump himself admitted that he has not once read that sacred document from cover to cover because he didn't find any inherent or intrinsic value in doing so. Is it any wonder then that there are questionable happenstances with respect to Donnie Jr. right now? And remember, during the G20 summit, he had Ivanka, his little daughter, there. The Ivanka that he wanted to Vanka, if she weren't his daughter, sit in on the meeting. Well, does she have ties to Russia like this too? You see, all of a sudden, the floodgates are opened. Nepotism is not going to be beneficial for this nation as a whole. And it's only going to undermine our credibility that much more as we continue to go on further and deeper into this regime.
You know, I found yet another article, and it's from MSNBC. Now, folks, I know where these sources are coming from. People are saying, oh, well, they're left-wing sources, blah, blah, blah. It's all fake news. Again, I have to point out the date of this article. This really supersedes the notion of fake news. June 16th, 2015 is when Trump announced that he was going to run, okay? So here's the article from MSNBC, written by Steve Bannon, not Bannon, Bannon, B-N-E-N.
His long-lost cousin.
Yes. 3 times once removed by his great-grandmother. August 19th, 2015. Okay? That's what? 2 months?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 months. 2 months and 3 days after Trump jumps in the race. And the title of the article is Trump Questions the Legality of the Constitution. He was talking about birthright citizenship, referring to the whole 14th Amendment, which, folks, here's the thing. The 14th Amendment, and here's a little bit of a history lesson, ratified in 1868, I believe, if not mistaken, came about because of, after the 13th Amendment, states themselves needed a reminder that slavery was abolished. Slavery was now illegal because it was in violation of the Constitution per the 13th Amendment. But yet states depriving the rights of individuals who had escaped slavery. You know, we had the Dred Scott case and all that other stuff going on as well. And
well, that was before all of this.
That was before all this, but it still rolled over. And basically what it established was that citizens that are born in the United States or become naturalized, thus United States citizens, had privileges and immunities at the state level, meaning the states could not deny nor disparage the privileges, their rights. Okay, they are immune from prosecution for exercising their rights and privileges at the state level. That's all that had to deal with. Now, Trump made the comment to O'Reilly, was in an interview with O'Reilly. O'Reilly says under the 14th Amendment, mass deportations of so-called birthright citizens cannot happen. Trump disagreed and said that many lawyers are saying that that's not the way it is in terms of this. In terms of what? And of course, he was talking about, deporting people and so on and so forth. And of course, Kasich, we're going to, break up families and blah, blah, blah.
My dad was a mailman.
Yeah. Didn't you get the postcard? So Trump to O'Reilly, Trump says this, the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. It's probably excessive, but only a little. He said it's unconstitutional. Wait, hold on a second. Again, get a copy of the Constitution, Federalist Papers and Anti-Federalist Papers, and a nice, big, fat, huge dictionary. Maybe a box of crayons and some of that little recycled line paper that kindergartners use to practice writing with, and take notes. The 14th Amendment was ratified and added to the Constitution. Legally, meaning that it automatically invokes or has authority as the supreme law of the land per the preamble to the Bill of Rights.
And Article 5
and
of the Constitution
Article 5 of the Constitution itself. So how could it be unconstitutional? And people are going to say, well, you're taking this out of context. Well, let's put it into context in terms of what Trump is meaning here. Trump says that what happens is they're in Mexico. They're going to have a baby. They move over here for a couple of days. They have the baby. It's not going to hold up in court. It's going to have to be tested. Here's the thing. That is why we have Title 8 of the U.S. Code, sections 1323 through 1329. Those are our federal immigration and nationality or naturalization statute. Those are valid law. Those are the laws on the books that have never been repealed. Why are you going out of your way to attack the Constitution and try to metamorphosize it into something that it doesn't have anything to do with? James Madison warned about that. And see, James Madison warned about it with the use of the General Welfare Clause when he said that to take it in a literal sense is a complete metamorphosis of the Constitution. And it basically changes the whole dynamic of the context of the Constitution. Well, that is said about the General Welfare Clause. It could be said about anything with the Constitution. Anything, any particular part, phrase, clause, amendment, article, etc. regarding the Constitution. If you take it in a literal sense, that means that you are taking it in a way that you interpret it to be. Guess what? That is void, because interpretation of the Constitution is prohibited by the 9th Amendment, which again falls under the purview of having the full force, weight, and effect as the supreme law of the land via the preamble to the Bill of Rights and in Article 5.
And you know what also plays into this? It goes back to one of the observations that you and I made all throughout the 2016 presidential election cycle. And that was, why was neither side, after Ted Cruz dropped out, really talking about the Constitution? Why were they paying lip service to it by having it up on the debate stage backgrounds, but never actually discussing it? In fact, you had always asked the question as to which of the policies that Donnie was proposing at the time weren't in violation of the Constitution.
Yeah.
When you actually parsed through it, it wasn't a single one. Not a single one of them.
Every single
and
one
that's
of
the
them
deal.
Were in violation.
Yeah, all of them were violative of it. And what that tells us, beyond a shadow of the doubt, is that he didn't care about the Constitution. But what drove me just bonkers throughout it all was how there were all of these people who were sitting there saying that they were constitutional scholars, and these were including friends of mine, colleagues of mine from law school and whatnot, people who should have known better, going forth and saying, well, rah-rah, shish kumbah, Donnie Trump, he's a hero, like Captain Planet, he's gonna take corruption down to zero.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? Why do we fall for that chicanery? Why do we go to that base instinct that is not even an instinct? It is suicidal. It is idiotic. That is a problem, because they're not looking for a solution. They want to hide from reality. They want to construct their own fantasy world. But when it has ramifications that have drastic and lasting impacts on us for generation after successive generation, that is not something that we can allow to come to fruition. And you're right, Donna, most of them don't know the Constitution. But the part that was really unsettling for me, was here were people who were really supposed to have knowledge of it, have an understanding of it, more so than others, even though we all carry that duty obligation, but above all, responsibility, sitting there just being willfully blind, completely ignoring the truth. And then we get the death threats. We get the attacks. We would be told that we were unpatriotic, that we didn't know what we were talking about. Drip by drip, fact by fact, have we not been proven correct in all of these facets, in every warning that we gave with respect to the Donaldoff. I think we have been rectified and justified and proven right throughout the course of it all.
There's another issue, Randy, when we have these individuals that, the ones that ultimately succumb to, issuing death threats to us and telling us that we need to move to another country. And then, of course, when I respond, well, here's my address. Why don't you come and help me pack? And then I hear nothing else from them. See, what it is, it boils down to, honestly, simplistically, because again, I am just a simple man, a simple layman when it comes to these things, I guess. It's poor sportsmanship. To put it in terms that they would be able to understand, since they're more worried about, which sports team is, who they can pick on their fantasy team that's going to get the most points for, which hooker they date rape in a hotel room or whatever the case is. Or,
what is this, another story about Trump and grabbing genitalia? What?
Yeah, it's all the same. They say it's the same, but really it's not the same, but it's the same. See, it's poor sportsmanship when they sit there and say, well, why can't you just get over it? Trump won. We won. No, we won. See, it reminds me of the sports teams that when I played sports as a kid and in high school, that when a team would gloat about winning, they would, we'd all line up after the game and, shake each other's hands, congratulate, the winning team and this and that. We had teams that wouldn't even shake our hands. They would just gloat about winning as if it was just some kind of miraculous thing, some great achievement. Well, when we played that team again, you know what we did to them? We annihilated them. We eviscerated them. We made them look so small and pedantic and petty that they didn't even want to line up to shake our hands and congratulate us. Instead, they tucked tail and ran. This is what's going to happen to all these cocksuckers. They don't understand this. It's very simplistic. You sit there and you gloat about your golden quaff winning. Oh, you can't stand it because Trump won. You didn't vote for him, and he's winning. He can't help himself. I can't stand all this winning. Folks, it's not winning. It's vanity. That's what it is.
Vainglory.
It's vain glory. And that is going to come around to haunt you. It's going to haunt you. And it's going to haunt your children. It's going to haunt your children's children. Do you know why? Because you are setting them up for failure. Because you are engaging in this kind of behavior, in this kind of ill-mannered nonsense. Everybody says, "Oh, my children, my children aren't going to make the same mistakes that I'm making." You know what? You're setting them up to do exactly that and much worse. Because you are not setting a good example for them. All because of your poor sportsmanship. And again, we don't want to see the Donald fail as a president. We don't want to see any president fail. Why? Because ultimately, when a president fails in the capacity of which they're supposed to serve, that means that we, the people, fail. We have nothing but ourselves to blame for that because we don't hold them accountable, because we don't want to hold each other accountable. We don't want to live up to our civic obligation and duty and our birthright as ultimate wielders of sovereignty, because we are the ultimate sovereigns, period. And when you behave like this, you are taking that badge, you are taking that armor that you are supposed to wear proudly and display for you, your children, and future generations of your posterity. And you are tarnishing it, you are banging it up, and you are denting it, and you are throwing it away. You have no one to blame but yourselves. And when your children and grandchildren come to you and tell you, you did this to us, how are you going to put your head down on your little golden coif pillow at night, close your eyes, and be able to sleep peacefully? You won't.
Of course they won't. And that's the thing. What you are speaking to directly there is one of the few duties, obligations, and responsibilities that were outlined to us in our capacity as United States citizens by the clear and concise language of the Constitution itself. In this case, the preamble says that we are to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. In other words, for the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born. But we're not doing that anymore. We're not doing that anymore because we have allowed our system of polity to devolve into a mere spectator sporting event. The R and the D now matter more than our liberties and freedoms. And we can't afford that. We cannot afford to continue to go down this path. We cannot afford to continue to ignore that which is of the most important things. That of our freedom and liberty. And yes, Donna, we are fighting on two fronts. We're fighting on more than two fronts. We're having to fight the radical left. We're having to fight the Trump left. We're having to fight former conservatives. We're having to fight disillusioned conservatives. That's the problem. It's that we have been marginalized by those who should know better, but are being willfully blind because they have been seduced by the notion of victory at all costs. That is what they are pushing for. That is what they are hoping to achieve. But in the end, what is it going to leave us with? It is going to leave us with absolutely nothing. It is going to leave us destitute of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And if we are lacking in our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, then we are lacking in everything, because that is what differentiates and distinguishes us from any other people on the face of God's green earth. Again, it's the people that are saying, well, you're wrong in saying that it was bad of Trump to say that American exceptionalism is a bad thing, because we need to make America great again. You see, there's the problem. They don't even know what made us great in the first place. They don't know what strengthens us, what propelled us to such lofty heights in our relatively brief yet illustrious history here on the face of God's green earth. That must come to a swift and immediate end.
I'm going to add to that, Randy. And I agree with Don, and I agree with everything that you've said. I'm going to take it a step further. We are fighting two fronts. See, on one hand, we have, and I actually think this term, it fits for the Trump supporters. We're going to, aside from cucksuckers, we can call them lobster backs. Okay? Hey, you have the Cheeto in chief there. So we can call quasterbags. Well, we can call them lobsterbacks. The redcoats, the British loyalists.
Mm-hmm.
See, here's another history lesson, folks. History, it's a very finicky woman, if you will. Okay, it's kind of like it reminds me of the movie Summer Rental, when Rip Torn is teaching John Candy how to sail. Oh, see, it's a woman. You got to dance with her. Well, here's the thing. History is finicky. Finicky woman. If you don't lead the woman the right way when you dance, you step on each other's feet. You get hurt. You fall down. You embarrass yourselves. Randy, I think of us, as well as Donna and various other individuals, First Air Marshal Nelson Ward, our friend Wayne, and everybody else that stands true to the Constitution. I think of us as the new founders. Because, see, our founding fathers had to fight on two fronts. They had to fight the front of the lobsterbacks or the British loyalists. And they had to fight the front of being made, or people becoming aware of what they were doing during that, what was it, almost a year and a half time that they spent in secrecy drafting and then ultimately ratifying our United States Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
That is the fight that we are fighting. That is the fight that ultimately, in the end, those who are fighting that fight won. So I'm not worried about all these lobsterbacks and all these Cheeto loyalists. And I'm not worried about the Democrats, the leftists, the Fabian socialists, because they're all lumped together. They all share the same mindset, some quaftopian experience that they'll never be able to achieve. Here we are, pushing our way forward to reestablishing and refounding what this country is great for.
The United States always has and always will stand for that revolutionary principle that our founding fathers forged into this world for the first time throughout the course of human events. That we, in our capacity as citizens, are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. We are the vanguards of liberty, the vanguards of freedom, and we are the ones that have to ensure that this nation continues in perpetuity down the path of that foundational image that our founding fathers conjured up at the inception of this nation some 237 plus years ago. The path that we traverse is not an easy one. But it's as the old adage goes, nothing worth having ever comes easily. Freedom is a tough road to hoe. But the benefits that come from that, the abilities that we have that arise from that, far outweigh any of the risks and dangers and difficulties that we would encounter on the path of ensuring that liberty. You see, it's not that America ever once ceased being great. We still have the longest standing constitutional document in the entire course of human events. Stop and think about just how magnificent that is. We've had many great powers in Western culture and civilization and in world culture and civilization. But none has been as stable, secure, or as focused on liberty and our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights as that of these United States of America. And that is why we have always said that we are endowed with the greatest birthright of any people on the face of God's green earth. And that birthright of which I speak is none other than our shared United States Constitution. But as Jeremy was saying, we cannot allow ourselves to be led astray by these dark and twisted and nefarious forces that continue to look for some sort of messianic figure to ride down on a quaff-shaped cloud from providence above to save us. Again, if you want to find the saviors of this republic of ours, mightn't I suggest you take a look in the mirror? Because by the very inherent and innate design of these United States of America, as is found in our sacred foundational documents, it is we, the people, that are endowed with the proper authority, ability, but above all, wherewithal to bring this nation back to the path to prosperity. Yes. All of this is far easier said than done, but done it can be, done it must be, and done it will be through the blood, sweat, tears, and toil of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in the land of the free and the home of the brave. In other words, we, the people of these United States of America, will restore prosperity. And we will do it through the Constitution, which has been there from the beginning. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back with one last round of alcohol. Folks, the only connection she has with Russia is that some of the vodka may be from Russia if you so choose to have that as your final round of alcohol. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined this evening by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Should you have any questions, comments, concerns, or even topic suggestions, please feel free to leave them either here on our YouTube page or our Google Plus page. Also, if you have not already done so, please subscribe. All subscribers are welcome here. As you can see from our frequent interactions from our stellar first-class passenger there in Donna Seafast. And then there is that Twitter thingy that you can follow us on. The Twitter thingy's address is @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. We also have Google+. We also have Facebook. You can find us there, or you can follow us on Twitter, and there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, Jeremy's personal Twitter account, the Blogspot account that is just chock full of useful information, and then there is, as mentioned in the description section of tonight's program, the Cafe Press account. Jeremy, tell them a little bit about the Cafe Press account.
Well, I could tell you this. It's not run by shady Russian lawyers, to be sure.
Oh, thank God.
And no, we don't have any, slicked back Guido-looking individuals, setting up fake email accounts that, deal with such things. But what we do have is a lot of great novelties on there, a lot of useful items you can wear to show the world, show your friends, show your family that you are an ultimate wielder of popular sovereignty, that you are going to stand for the Constitution, because you are going to stand for the Wright Flyer Radio Aviation Excellence. And folks, I'm going to tell you right now, just because we didn't get to it a little bit earlier on, should there be any wandering, non-directional, wind-up trucker flight attendants that happen to try to dissuade you from browsing or even selecting and purchasing any of our ideas, push her out of a plane.
Absolutely. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We hope to see you again next time. Please do take care.